Good afternoon, everybody. On this Thursday, April 17th, 2025, I have all of your stories for your rush hour ride home. And on today's episode, a Firefest update. Now, I know what you're thinking, Dave, is this a repeat? No, there's a new update. It may be coming back sooner than you thought, but hold off on buying tickets. Also, an update on the astronauts, the all-female crew that was shot into space. Now, Jessica Alba is sticking up for them. I'll share what she has to say. And then Blake Lively speaks. She has been named to the top 100 most influential people list, I guess because she donated 5 years ago to a charity. I'll share what she has to say with my proper response. And then Bill O'Reilly is criticizing Donald Trump. I mean, what upside down universe do we live in? I'll get into why he's criticizing the Trump administration and more on free speech as Ryan Grim explains how we can't just start labeling journalists as terrorists because they want to protect the Constitution. It's really important, especially for our show, that we get this right. I don't need anyone knocking on my door and telling me I'm a terrorist for speaking truth to power. Not in my book, okay, folks? I'm not going to El Salvador unless it's to report on the story. And then we'll discuss how the Trump administration may be held in contempt. What does that mean? Well, someone may be going to jail if they do not start abiding by the judicial system. Nobody is above the law. So a lots to get into. We're going to cover it all. These stories and more happening right now on The Rush. Well, there's something sure as day. The sun rises in the east. I'm going to talk about astronauts, and we're going to give Firefest 2 updates. So here's Firefest 2. They're looking for a new location and date. They're also probably looking for DJs and people to buy tickets. They're looking for a lot of things, but here's the update on the festival that never was.
They're now saying that the date will be location dependent. So they're not officially saying that it's being postponed, but obviously if they're in the middle of looking for a new location and this is supposed to be about 6 weeks away, it seems like a pretty good chance. They claim that Playa del Carmen, where it was scheduled up until a couple of hours ago, approached them at that point and said, please bring your business here. And then a couple days after getting international attention when they did a press conference, Playa del Carmen then said, we've never heard of these guys either. So,
all right, so they're looking for a location and a date. This is like, do you guys remember in high school you'd score like a keg or something or a couple 6-packs of beer and you'd be like, I need a party to take this to. Like, I got the beer. I need a venue. I need people to like me, you know? I kind of feel like that's what's going on right here. So either way, thoughts and prayers to Billy McFarland. I still want it to succeed. And like I said, it's always going to not work out until it does. And people will look at Billy McFarland as a scam artist, a fraudster, but he did refund all the tickets for Firefest 2.0. He is paying restitution to the people who lost money from Firefest 1.0. He did go to jail for 3 years. I'm telling you right now, in some distorted kind of dystopian world, I want a guy like Billy McFarland on my team. I mean, this guy is a hustler. Can he just get a victory in a world where there's all these issues? And by the way, not a good time to do a festival outside the country. People do not want to be going in and out of the country with all of the issues of immigration. So find a little location in the U.S. I don't know. Find a little Firefest, Panama Beach or something. Or, Florida's like, no, thank you. All right. Well, Jessica Alba says blasting off at Trump is a better idea than blasting off at the woman who went into space. Now, again, I'm going to share what she had to say, and then I'll give my response here. But there's been a lot of criticism towards the PR sort of trip that was the 11-minute rocket heard around the world, right? They shot up in a dick-shaped rocket into space for 11 minutes and they came back down. I mean, people can go on hot air balloons and have more fun, right? Either way, here's what she had to say. I've seen endless criticism of 5 women doing their space thing. I can't see how it affects our lives. I wish people would show same energy and focus that anger towards, show the same energy and focus that anger towards fearlessly denouncing Trump's abuses of power, which do affect countless lives in the U.S. and the world. And by the way, a lot of people can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I understand the point she's making. The criticism shouldn't be on the women who sat in the rocket ship. It should be on Jeff Bezos and, just the idea that we're not taxing billionaires appropriately and they have all this money to do all these, F-around projects, right? It's like, look, yeah, everyone can be rich and still pay into a system that helps the fabric of society. But when Amazon truck drivers have to pee in bottles because they can't deliver their packages fast enough. I mean, my neighborhood has these Amazon truck drivers that look like they could compete in the NASCAR 500, right? Indy 500, whatever. you get the point. The point is, it's like, first work on not doing union busting in your Amazon companies, and then, because a lot of these billionaires, they don't get their money out of nothing, right? They siphon it up, right? They are using technology and artificial intelligence and automation to siphon that money upwards, so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And people take these jobs, but it's because they have to. No one's like, boy, I can't wait to become an Uber driver, that too, an Amazon driver. It's like, that's just the job that was offered. Amazon will set up and they'll kind of deplete the resources of the area, take all these other jobs away, and then people have to work at Walmart. They have to go on government assistance because the pay's so low. They have to do all these issues. And yet, then we get to watch the billionaires be rewarded and shoot people into space and be like, aren't we brave? It's like, okay, there, astronaut Katy Perry, chill out. So I understand the point people are trying to make, and I think Jessica Alba needs to understand that people can criticize both at the same time. All right, well, let's criticize the pharmaceutical industry. Let's do that. American Idol's Doug Kiker, his cause of death was revealed. He passed away from an opioid overdose. Opioid is a wicked, wicked addiction, and I think the more we talk about pain meds and the addictions that can come from pharmaceutical companies, overprescribing pain meds, or not making us aware of what they actually, how addictive they can be, I think we have to destigmatize that conversation. We look at addicts as criminals, right? And the truth is, people that become addicted, they have to get that fixed, so they might commit a crime in order to do that. But the only person they're really harming in the end is themselves. And it's terrible. And the only way around this is a better healthcare system that can prevent or help aid people that are dealing with pain or do have issues that stem from other chronic illnesses and things like that. And nobody willingly says, you know what, I want to become an addict today. It's just something that exists within people that, sometimes gets the best of them. So truly just a tragic story, and hopefully it's one of many conversations that can lead to us coming up with better solutions to help each other, live in this world. Really, that's what it comes down to. Is we talk about social media on our phones, right? We talk about this idea that it connects all of us, but it's really the most antisocial thing we have. And the simple world of living in a community and neighbors checking in on each other and knowing when someone might be acting differently or depressed, that's kind of been washed away, and we've been isolated. And the result of that is friends and family not understanding that their neighbor or loved one might be addicted or going through hard times. And it's just a reminder to trust your gut and your intuition and listen to those around you and check in on them, because everyone's going through something, and we all can bond and overcome it together. But so many people live with that addiction in the shadows in a dark place. And it's truly so tragic to think that, that can be what leads to an overdose. And an opioid overdose can happen so quickly, and it doesn't discriminate based on, you could be in any social class and you can still come to the same conclusion, which is that you're not as powerful as these mega drugs that are created. All right, let's move it on. So up next, we're going to talk about Blake Lively. She's speaking out after making Time's 100 list amid the Justin Baldoni lawsuit. Not something I take lightly. Now, did she pay to be on this list? I'll tell you my thoughts coming next. Today's podcast is sponsored by Ancient Nutrition. For over 1,000 years, explorers the world over searched for and told tales of a mythical fountain said to restore one's youth and cure anything. Newsflash, it was never found. But hey, we do have collagen. While it's not a miracle, it is proven to be pretty darn good at helping you look and feel younger and more healthy. What's the best collagen, you ask? Well, it's made by Ancient Nutrition, of course. This formula is powered by clinically studied ingredients that promote fat loss and healthy weight management, as well as building lean muscle. Collagen can also reduce joint discomfort and improve the look and growth of your skin, hair, and nails. You know me, I'm a hair guy. Turning 40, I'm fighting father time. One scoop in the morning with a smoothie, that's all it takes. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/rush-hour. That's ancientnutrition.com/rush-hour for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/rush-hour. So as far as public relations is concerned, I was a member of my college's public relations society, the Public Relations Student Society of America, PRSSA. I was also a marketing student. I graduated with a degree in marketing, and I find this stuff very fascinating because recently this year I spoke to PR people and was like, what can we do to get my show into new audiences? And the PR people, their bill was actually going to be $4,600 a month. They wanted a 6-month retainer. So you're talking about 30 grand. It's a lot of money. But what PR companies get you, depending on what you want, is I could tell you right now, if you put a gun to my head and said, Dave, you need to get in Forbes magazine, I could get into it next month with a good PR person. You see, there's like Business Insider, Forbes magazine. There's certain companies where whether you're reading something that's organic versus something that PR people kind of place you in. The Time list is a little bit of both, right? Time Person of the Year is something you could politic for, but it's probably something that the editors more than not come up with based on their meritocracy or whatever their algorithm is to decide who's the Time Person of the Year. But when it comes to these listicles, these top 100 most influential people, it's a smorgasbord of, people that are very influential, and then people like Blake Lively, who more than likely is a result of a PR person making phone calls saying, we need to get our client good press. Because honestly, the only testimony that they had towards her philanthropy was that she donated to the NAACP in 2019, something like 5-6 years ago. And I'm not saying she doesn't donate in other ways, but it's like, everybody who's at this tax status donates, right? It's a tax write-off. You give a certain amount to different companies as a way to curry favor, look good. It's good PR. And it doesn't mean it can't be also good. You can enjoy it, but it's also like, it's a tax write-off, right? And in this case, now we have Blake Lively speaking, and people have looked into it and said, look, I don't really, and again, I'm not here to bash anybody who does donate because that's good. It's good to give back, right? I prefer us all giving back through like a tax system. That way it's really fair, and those that make a whole lot of money give back, like Social Security tax, right? We all pay into it, but above like making $165,000 a year or a number like that, you don't pay anymore. And my thought is, if you did make $12 million a year, you should pay the same Social Security tax to cover the people that make less money. I think that's how we all benefit from a shared society where we use the roads and the bridges, and the education system makes us all better, and the healthcare system could be something that keeps us all from falling into despair and mental health issues. That's just me. So I think donating is fine, but I always say put your money where your mouth is, and let's work on reform to have a system that better helps us all pay into it in a fair way. So she was placed in this year's Time 100 list, and they of course are going to talk about the legal battles here. But here's what she had to say. It's an honor to be acknowledged on the Time 100 list for 2025. She posted this on Instagram. So let's just get into it. And again, we shared this yesterday. Sherilyn Hill posted the blurb about her, which is, of course, the NAACP sort of donations that she made. But here, let's go to her Instagram. Again, edited 17 hours ago. It's an honor to be acknowledged. To be written about by the great Sherrilyn Ifill is not something I take lightly. Her work has shaped our nation. Who she is as a human, woman, mother, leader, fighter, healer, empath, risk taker, and dream maker has shaped my heart and also my stamina to never stop believing in a future that's better and safer for everyone. Thank you, Time. Thank you, Sherilyn, for one of the most surreal and meaningful moments of my life in this honor. My 10-year-old self is pretty blown away right now. Multiple things can be true, right? She can be charitable, and this can be a big moment for her, but I don't think it trumps the bad PR she's getting from the Justin Baldoni case. Whether you believe her side or Justin Baldoni's side, it's definitely how people feel about her this year is definitely a hell of a lot worse than how they felt about her last year. And no amount of Time 100 is probably going to change anybody's opinion on this matter. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. And if people know what they've read about her accusations on Justin and his response, most people, they just feel icky. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there was a reel or a TikTok that went viral from someone who said, hey, I went to school with Blake. So they basically were commenting on how rich it is that Blake donated to the NAACP because, Blake, I think she had her wedding at a plantation, and, there's this idea that she was propping up and supporting some of the racist history in our country. And she's kind of obsessed with like Southern living and that antebellum era and all of that. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of all of that, mainly because so someone went to high school with her. It's like, and the person's reel basically said, well, Blake she knew about plantations in high school and she, whatever. And that all may be true. There could be multiple things going on here, that Blake does want to help out and does see that there is an issue with racial injustice and whatnot. But then it could also be true that Blake didn't want to be told no and wanted to commandeer a movie so that she could edit it to make herself look good based on her own fears of coming off looking bad. Or maybe she's worried about her career not being where she wants it and wants to rise to the levels of her Khaleesi Dragons, Ryan Reynolds, and Taylor Swift. Both can be true is my point. So very wordy just to say interesting. I'm sure her comments are very well curated because right now I'm not seeing any dissent on her page. I'm actually surprised. Oh, it says comments on this post have been limited. I think this is what's going to happen for Blake Lively in the future and again, I don't necessarily hate the idea of limiting people's comments. I don't, because I believe in free speech, but I also believe that on your Instagram page, if you don't want people to come into your living room and talk shit to you, don't. Like, I believe in both, I wouldn't want people, even if I was, guilty as charged, I wouldn't want people just like nonstop. And this is exactly what would happen is if she posts and makes it public, it's going to take away from the Time 100, whether that's right or wrong. That's just what would happen. So either way, you can't fault somebody for wanting to limit their comments. But it's not going to go away. The issue with her is not going to go away until if there is any bombshell information that comes out that vindicates her. I don't see any of that going in her direction. All right, let's move it on from the Blake Lively stuff, and we're going to go into several different conversations. The Trump administration, it was ruled upon by a court that they may have, and it's very likely that they have acted in contempt of the court by not turning around the flights after a judge said they have to turn them around. So what's going to happen next? The court system has been very conservative, and by that I mean they've wanted to right this issue without pulling their kind of like hardcore lever, which is if they hold someone in contempt, the final thing they can do is jail that person. So this is very, very serious what's going on right here. And by the way, this isn't some woke judge ideology targeting somebody. This judge has followed every chain of command to get them to do the right thing here. Have a listen.
Federal judge is threatening to open a high-stakes contempt investigation into the Trump administration for deporting more than 200 Venezuelan migrants to a notorious prison in El Salvador, despite the judge's order that they be returned to the U.S. immediately. Questioning why the administration allowed these flights last month to go ahead, Judge James Boasberg declaring the administration displayed a willful disregard for his order.
And by the way, we looked at this senator from Maryland who went to El Salvador, spoke to everybody who worked at the embassy there, and they said, we haven't heard any conversation at all about him trying to get these people back into the U.S. So we're going to continue this conversation. Also, we're going to talk about more of the tariff wars and what that means for us as the country now is sort of like the Trump administration is battling with Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, because he doesn't want to lower interest rates because he thinks, like all economists think, that these tariffs are going to raise inflation. And you can't have inflation going up and lower interest rates because that's going to encourage more spending, which is also going to encourage more of the inflation rate going up. So very complicated stuff. We're going to get into that next. We're learning that we might not have all the cards in this crazy game of poker, as China says they'll talk to us if we start showing them respect. And again, this is on the heels of J.D. Vance, vice president, calling the Chinese peasants. Do they want to even do a deal with us at this point? We are about 15% of their exports. So theoretically, if they secure other trade deals with other countries, they could just box us out, which would be absolutely devastating to not just our country, but a lot of American companies. Here's what China has to say.
China says it's open to trade talks with the U.S., but only after President Trump meets its requirements, like reining in remarks from his cabinet members. Sources tell us that other conditions include a more consistent U.S. position and a willingness to address China's concerns around sanctions and Taiwan. China says
so we are not in a good place right now, our country, to offer the terms of what we want, which is surprising because, as we see here, J.D. Vance wants the UK to repeal LGBTQ plus hate speech laws to secure a trade deal. Why the hell, if we're supposed to just be worried about the economics of this all, why the hell do we care what the UK does with their speech laws? Isn't isn't it the place that, Republicans want free speech? And yet here we are trying to dictate what they decide is hate speech. It's always, with this regard to the El Salvadorian prison, everyone says El Salvador can do what they want with their country, right? These are their laws. We can't be worried about that. And then meanwhile, an anonymous source advisor says J.D. Vance is obsessed with the fall of Western civilization. It seems as though he's obsessed with people getting protections that have been in an otherwise community that has been persecuted. The LGBTQ community is still in many countries illegal. It's illegal to hold hands or kiss in a same-sex relationship in some Middle Eastern countries, and in other places there are hate crimes. I mean, we are not far past the Stonewall riots and all of the cases where there still are plenty of hate crimes in our country committed against people based on who they love, which is absolutely ridiculous. Everyone always says, "Well, if you're an adult, do whatever the hell you want with your body." And now we have our own government saying, "Well, if you want to trade with us, you have to get rid of it." It's absolutely bonkers. It's bonkers, right? So there's a conversation around, what does this mean for farmers? I moved to Tennessee last year, right? Big farm country. And of course, most farm country has voted Republican, and yet they're the first people that need to get bailed out based on these tariffs, right? So these tariffs go into place, and that when USAID was getting stripped, all of these farmers that were building barns because it was part of the Build Back Better plan, and they were assured that they would have subsidies for this. All of these farmers are now left not knowing what the heck they can do. Are they going to have anyone buying their products? We saw that China just did a multi-billion-dollar deal with the soybean farm in Brazil, completely circumventing the U.S. market. So we really, really, really rely on people buying our crops. What will happen next?
A lot of farmers that I've talked to in the last week or so have said, they're in the middle of spring planting season, and that a trade war makes everything sort of up in the air. What would his message to them be? And also, is there anything specifically planned to provide relief like in President Trump's last term?
Yes, well, relief is being considered. The Secretary...
And by the way, relief means government handout, right? You can't call it a government handout when it's a poor inner city kid whose mom is on unemployment because she can't get a job and they live in a food desert. You can't call it a government handout then, but now call it relief when it's a farmer. That's quite frankly just so hypocritical. Call it what it is. It is subsidizing the agricultural industry. And the biggest subsidies we have in our country is for agriculture.
Secretary of Agriculture, I know, has spoken to the president about that, and again, it's being considered. And as for the president's message to the farmers, he put it out himself. He could speak for himself much better than I can speak for him, and so I would just direct you to the statement he had, telling the farmers again and reiterating his support for them and that he has their backs, which he...
So he says he has the farmers' backs. And now they just did a poll to ask people would they change their vote knowing now what they know now versus several months ago, and only 1% of Trump voters said they would change their vote. So they're ride or die on this. And here's a clip from a few days ago I wanted to share. Trumpland with Alex Wagner. These are people that are losing money. These are people that aren't going to be able to pay their bills. These are farmers that don't know if they're going to have anyone buying the crops that they're making. And you know what? Just watch. This is insane.
They're the largest tariffs in a century. They're larger than the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which many people say directly contributed to the Great Depression. Does that worry you?
Of course, those concerns are in the back of my mind, but as we've already alluded to, we're optimists. We do a lot of praying. We have a lot of faith, and our faith is in God and not in administration.
In agriculture, there's about 85% of what happens on my farm that is completely out of my control.
Yeah.
So I have to do the very best I can at managing that 15% of inputs and cost and labor and marketing and signing the best contract and doing the best job that I can, and leave the other 85% up to the good Lord. And that's all we can do, whether it's weather or disease or a hailstorm or a pandemic or administration.
So they're saying 85% is out of their control. An act of God, a hailstorm, a hurricane, a tornado. Those are acts of God. The tariffs that exist now, as Alex Wagner, and I love Alex Wagner, as she had said, the worst tariffs since the Great Depression. These are not an act of God. These are an act of madness that every economic expert says is a bad deal. because the tariffs are paid by us, the consumer. So inflation is going to go up. The cost of goods are going to go up. Other countries are going to no longer do business with us. They're not going to just all pick up and move over to our country right away. We're not going to have Nike factories. iPhones will not be made in our country, right? So these aren't other countries that have ripped us off. We as a wealthy country have decided, you know what, we want higher skilled jobs. So we kind of got rid of that manufacturing. Now, some might come back if you do targeted tariffs. But as of right now, other countries are just saying, how long do we need to ride out the storm? And it's absolutely insane that these farmers, at least that she interviewed, go, you know what? We're just going to pray and hope it's okay. You can pray all you want, but you got to fucking vote. You got to call your representatives. You got to demand in each of your states that people will be held accountable for things that are only hurting you. So what? They can make all these crops and then just hope that they get some relief? It's not the world we want to live in.
And we just weather the storm.
I mean, in North Carolina, every year we prepare for a major hurricane.
Right.
You know, every 3 or 4 years, something drastic is going to happen. Yeah. So we're used and we're accustomed to that. Now it's just that much more challenging.
It's self-inflicted.
We've got to get through it and know how to and weather this economic cycle, this storm.
This is the thing I think that confounds people.
Yes.
You're talking about acts of God, acts of nature, hurricanes, rainstorms. This isn't that. This is a person in the White House making decisions. Does that frustrate you at all?
In the world now, we need certainty and we need consistency. And we, like Brandon said earlier, we've got to have trade. All of our markets are depressed right now. And the only way to really succumb to that is we've got to be sending stuff on boats.
So it seems as though they know the theories of trade, but they're not willing to criticize Supreme Leader who put these tariffs on, completely self-inflicted. Again, there's a lot that's wrong with our country. There is a lot wrong with our country. The middle class has been going away. I've been fighting for taxing those that have become ultra wealthy, right? We had someone the other day, right? I shared the AOC Stop the Oligarchy tour, right? Fight oligarchy. And then I had someone in our comments say, you know what? This is really rich because AOC took a first-class flight to deliver this speech. This is one of the greater problems we have, is folks can't understand the difference between a first-class flight and oligarchy. First-class flight might cost $5,000. Okay, yeah, that's a lot of money. I've never flown first class other than when I got it free on a few points, right? I've never flown first class. I've flown business class. But the billionaires own their own jets. Okay, and there's a complete difference between flying first class and fighting the billionaires that have bought and paid all of the government politicians, both on the Democrat and Republican side, right? So it's just insane that we're not even having the conversation about speaking truth to power in these moments. So, like, if we have a groundswell of communities coming together, both on the left and on the right, stopping this madness, it will stop. But instead they say, cross your fingers and pray. What? So let's go to Bill O'Reilly again, super conservative, saying you got to stop this madness.
Mr. Garcia has to be brought back. The government has to facilitate Albrego Garcia's release from Salvadoran custody and effectuate his return. Facilitate and effectuate. So basically the court is saying, you got to bring him back.
And of course, this isn't an economic conversation. This is about immigration and due process, really. It's more about due process. But I just think it's interesting now that we're seeing, everyone's, Trump derangement syndrome. We're seeing the biggest Trump fans say, dude, you can't do this. You know what I mean? And it really does take a brave person to come forward and say, look, you can like Trump all you want, but he's violating democracy. He's violating due process. And a judge might start sending his own administration to jail. Now, they're going to call that political persecution or whatever they want. But the truth is, everybody has to follow the law.
Trump administration doesn't want to bring him back. And the word now is from the Department of Social Security filed yesterday, said, well, we don't have the authority to bring him back. Okay, so you remember that yesterday the El Salvador.
So he's clearly calling bullshit. Of course they have the authority to bring him back. They're not allowing the senator into the prison to even see if this guy's alive. Yet they'll send all these other people there to do press in front of the prisoners. It's absolutely ridiculous. Well, the Trump administration is now claiming they have evidence that he actually is a bad guy, and they were going to release the police report. Here's what they found in the police report. This, again, is what sent a man to another country's foreign prison.
Police report was released by the Trump administration today in a move that completely backfired, as it fully contradicts everything the Trump administration has been claiming. Now, first they claimed that they proved he was a gang member, but the only evidence in the police report is that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and one person's word. Then they said that he had a criminal history, that he was involved in trafficking and other crimes. Well, guess what's on the police report? That's right. Subject has no criminal history.
All right, so there it is. I mean, look, what are we doing? We just got to go on hunches? Are we asking psychics? Do you think this guy was in a gang? No, we have what's called evidence that we need in order to prosecute people. And that's not just American citizens, but that's anyone in our country has the right to due process. And he wasn't deported. And he was sent there illegally, and enough people are speaking up about it. There'll still be comments, no, how are you supporting this gang member? That'll still exist out there. But the crazy thing is, and I shared this morning, and if you didn't catch it, I have it on my Instagram, The Rush Hour with Dave Neal. Also, I've got it on TikTok, D Neals. But I'm sharing this idea that Trump's terror czar, who's this guy from the United Kingdom, he is now saying, if you are in support of getting Garcia back to the U.S., which essentially means if you're in support of what the Supreme Court has ordered, then you'd be considered a terrorist. Now, this is extremely scary because we talked about this before, how, there's no way they're going to be sending people that aren't criminals. Well, now we found out they did send people that aren't criminals. And then they go, well, there's no way they're going to be sending homegrown citizens abroad. Well, now that's what they want to do. And the way they'll do it is by calling people terrorists. Because when you're a terrorist, you lose all rights. And who's going to defend a terrorist? Well, even terrorists deserve due process. But calling journalists, and again, myself, but obviously bigger journalists, calling people terrorists for speaking truth to power is exactly out of the fascist playbook.
If you spent any time paying attention to politics over the last couple of years, you know that the number one animating concern of Trump supporters, or at least it's in the top three, is free speech. Is their complaint that the media colluded with the Biden administration to tell people what they could and could not say, particularly on social media and particularly around the pandemic. Now, for people who watch our show, Breaking Points or Counterpoints, they know that I actually was against that at the time. So I agreed with the Trump supporters at the time that this was the wrong thing for the government to be doing. Now that they are in power, they have the chairman of the FCC, which regulates licenses for many of the broadcast news media, out there threatening them over their coverage of the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. This is FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who's out on Twitter pointing out that they have that this news organization that he's attacking has a license, which is a vulgar threat to strip that license, and then complaining about the way that they are covering this case. Now, if you watched my last TikTok, you'll know that everything Brendan Carr is saying here is a lie. So there's the extra irony that he is coming after the media for the way it's reporting on the Abrego Garcia case, and he is lying. He is encouraging them to lie.
And the scariest part about this, and by the way, this is Ryan Grim, in today's world, you got to be careful on who you trust. Ryan Grim is one of the most trustworthy journalists out there. He is so good with criticizing the left when they do something that's wrong and the right and everything in between. So, but this idea, and by the way, mainstream media has already started to bend the knee to Trump. They can't be trusted because these are big corporations that when he sues them, they settle versus fight for their First Amendment rights, freedom of press, and this and that. So really the only people you can fully trust right now are these independent journalists. And I just tell you, just make sure to support them. Whether it's Ryan Grim, Breaking Points, whoever it is, support independent journalism because they're the only ones holding this whole system up right now. They really are. And my plea to my Republican friends out there is this is a 5-alarm fire that you need to speak about. You need to speak to your family, your friends, your social circle, and The left, the right, Democrats, Republicans need to come together and support freedom of the press and free speech right now. And I've been saying this and beating this on a drum when it comes to political protesters or protesters of war, saying if someone's pro-Palestine, you can't just call them a terrorist without going through the proper processes, right? We've said this about how they're kicking student visas out and people that are literally heading to the meeting to become a naturalized citizen. And they're kicking them out for their stance on not wanting wars to exist. You have to support the freedom of speech you don't like. You can't just support the freedom of speech you do like. And my hope would be, I wish the left would be stronger on free speech like they used to be. I wish Democrats would be stronger on free speech. I think they kind of like lost their way there, and now is a chance to grab the bull by the horns and say enough is enough. We will all stand together and speak truth to power, and you can't be throwing in prison or disappearing people that are speaking out against the crimes that are existing right now. That's the world you have to live in. I'm willing to use my platform to run overtime, to get a shit ton of people unsubscribing when they do. But I'll say this, we're gaining more respect out of people for speaking truth to power, but we're losing people that want to put their ears and their fingers in their ears and go, no, everything's perfectly fine. Like some of these farmers saying, you know what, we just pray to God that things are going to be okay. You can pray all you want, but God's saying, I gave you a voice. Use it. We'll be back in the morning. I'm Dave Neal, and this is The Rush.